Hello everyone and welcome to another special video where we are going to analyze now the winners of the best decks rather of Malmo regionals. Now all of the deck lists have not been made available, but we do have first, second, third and fourth place. Thanks to Limitless TCG, I believe, or Pokemon Mentor. One of those sites posted the lists, which I'm really grateful for. And once again, TCG Valplum still giving a lot of things to talk about. This is Gonzalo Pereira's list, the guy who did win Sheffield Regionals, now won Malmo Regionals as well, with a new version of the deck, and one I really like. It's definitely an improvement, I would say, and it has some very slight changes, but I do feel like they're for the better. So let's review them, shall we? He keeps the 444 Decidueye line, which is of course crucial to the deck. He also keeps the 222 Valplum, which is great to limit your opponent's strategies. But he's now using a bigger or a wider variety of attackers. He dropped the Taurus from his list. He's now using the 2 Lugia, just like I did for the Oceania tournament, for the Oceania International Tournament. And he's also using 3 different decks. He kept the Beedrill EX, which he was using, and so he's not choosing to go for the Meowth. I guess Beedrill is strictly better now, simply because a lot of people are trying to counter the deck through Garbodor and through things like Wofed and things like that. So like using Wofed to set up a Garbodor. So Beedrill definitely seems like a great idea to have in the deck as of now. And then he also has one Espion EX, which just like Takuya used for the Australian tournament and his top 8 finish, Espion EX is a really good card for the mirror, because it means you get a lot cheaper KOs. Like you can target the Valplums and the Decidueyes, and as long as you leave 80 damage on them, you can eventually take a KO with the Espion. So that seems like a pretty good strategy. I guess it's strictly in some scenarios you can KO the Mega Pokemon easier as well. If the Mega Mewtwo has 170 damage, if Mega Guardies have 170 damage, if the Mega Rays have 170 damage, you can, I guess, skip a turn of attacking. You can get cheaper KOs through a single energy from Espion EX's attack. So definitely a good card overall to have. And he also runs 3 Rainbow Energy now instead of the Grass, and a Jolteon EX. Now this card is a great inclusion. It definitely helps deal with the Yveltal and Volcanion matches, which are definitely some of the hardest matches for the deck, and it gives you a pretty much an auto win condition almost, since they cannot touch the Jolteon. We all know how incredibly powerful the Valplum lock decks were with Valplum and the different array of attackers, and with this deck maybe you don't need things to deal specifically with evolution decks such as Greninja or such as the Megas, because you do have the Decidueye and you do have Lugia, but Volcanion and things like Turbo Dark in some instances, and Yveltal especially, can definitely create problems for you if you don't deal with them properly or if you don't get a strong start. So Jolteon provides a new route to secure those matchups, which seems really good, especially against everything except Volcanion, because they don't run Ranger. And we even saw Pedro, the Australian winner, decided to not use Ranger. So this version of the deck I really like, and I do have a league challenge coming up this weekend. I can't get any points, but the prizes are too enticing, and I think this is probably going to be the deck that I will be running this weekend. So maybe I'll keep the Meowth, maybe not, over the Espion, we'll see. But this seems like a stronger version against the overall metagame, and now that the metagame is trying to adapt to dealing with Decidueye Valplum can also evolve in a way in order to deal with the metagame, and that's how Gonzalo played out his list and ended up winning the event once again. So huge props to him. Now, that was the first place list. The rest, the item cards are literally the same, the exact same, and the supporter cards are literally the same. The big changes were the grass energy transformed into rainbow energies, and he's using the second Lugia, the Jolteon, and the Espion. He might have dropped, he dropped the Lily as well. So he dropped one Lily, and he dropped the Taurus for the second Lugia, and there might be some space I'm missing. He might have had 3 Float Stone, I'm not entirely sure. Oh, he has only running 2 Shaman, that's right. So differences from my list are the Meowth, the third Shaman, the Meowth and the third Shaman, and and the fourth Grass Energy, So he's running 1 less Energy and 1 less Shaman, and in those spaces he brought the Jolteon and the Espion, and then he has the Beedrill over the Meowth. So pretty good adaptation to the metagame, and I'm sure we're starting to see TCG being teched into different things, like we will see in this upcoming deck for the second place. And it's just those extra damage counters are too good. So speaking of that, let's review the second place deck, which as you can see is the CGI with Espion GX. Now there's a very obvious combo in the attack in Espion GX's attack Divide GX, which allows you to place 10 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like, with the CGI's Feather Arrow ability, which allows you to place 2 damage counters on any of your opponent's Pokemon. So a very obvious combo there. He's also running the Jolteon EX in order to transform Espion into a lightning type Pokemon, and I guess potentially the Dartrixes, but I don't think that's ever relevant. But turning the Espion GXs into lightning type gives you a much easier Yveltal matchup and allows you to KO Shamans a lot easier, because otherwise Shaman Loop could maybe create an issue for the deck. He's also running a smaller CGI line. He's running a 3-3-3 line instead of a 4-4-4. But he's not running Valplum, so he gets a lot more freedom in terms of item cards and reusing supporters and things like that. He's also running the 1 Oranguru 1 Shaman split, which we did see in Gustavo Wada's Volcanion list that made top 8 out of Australia. So we are seeing this combination. Oranguru is definitely a very useful card, especially in the late game, I would say, when the end wars start. And we'll see if this starts becoming a bigger trend. It's also not a secret that in Europe they tend to prefer to use a single Shaman instead of 2 for some reason, and I guess 1 Oranguru 1 Shaman makes sense in those scenarios. Like if they really don't want to use 2 Shaman, then using 1 Shaman and 1 Oranguru seems like the ideal compromise between a single Shaman and 2 Shaman. That's like the middle ground, so it makes sense. And he also ran 1 Lugia EX to have that different damage output of sorts to punish like a big Mewtwo or something. And the item cards are all pretty similar. He chose to run 4 Level Ball and 4 Ultra Ball instead of 4 Trainer's Mail and 4 Ultra Ball and 3 Level Ball. This makes sense because Level Ball searches for the EVs, searches for the Rowlets and the Dartrixes, and can even search for the Jolteon. So they're always useful cards, especially because you get to search out your EV, and then if you attach a Psychic, you get to immediately evolve. And I can see how this deck is like a very good metagame call in a sense, and it should deal with Mewtwo very easily. It probably has an okay Valplum Decidueye matchup, even though it did lose the finals, but that's mostly, I would assume, without having seen the finals, based on how early the Valplum lock gets going. He does run the 1 Tech Olympia, but very interestingly, he's running 3 Verseekers and 3 Lysander. Now, I can see many more people adapting their decks this way, because if Vileplume ends up getting super popular once again, then the Verse Seekers are completely useless and the supporter cards are what you want. So I wouldn't be surprised to see an increased amount of Lysanders and potentially Ents, and maybe even counts of Olympia or Ranger, and a decreased amount of Verse Seekers, because especially Lysanders, essentially later on in the game your Verse Seekers always become either N or Lysander usually. So if you increase those counts, even if you're under item lock, you get to use those supporters. So it makes sense for that shift to happen if Vileplume starts being super popular, which we are seeing that happen. Interestingly enough, he also only has 3 Sycamore instead of the 4. So he has a 3-3-3 line of their supporters with 1 Olympia instead of the 4-3-2. But I mean, it makes sense, and he also has the Oranguru to make up for that a little bit. And he still has 3 Trainer's Mail and the 4 Ultra Ball, so it makes sense. I mean, you can, it's a cut you can do. I personally wouldn't do it, but I can see how you won't get punished for doing that. And that's pretty much it. The 2 Floatstone is what I feel shaky here, because Espion GX has a 1 retreat cost, but everything else, well, I guess the CGI, Lugia and Oranguru have higher retreat costs. So only 2 Floatstone can maybe mess up with your plans, but he also has the Olympia to make up for that, so it makes sense. And yeah, that's the second place deck, a very interesting deck. And I will definitely next week, I'm pretty sure next week I will be doing daily videos. I'm pretty sure from now on, starting next week, there will be daily English videos. So I do plan on featuring this very interesting Espion, the CDI deck. I do plan on featuring this Quad Lapras deck, which also took Malmo Regionals by surprise, and we'll see what else. But next week we're gonna have daily English videos, so you can look forward to that, so I can showcase the different gameplay of these new decks that were showcased at Malmo Regionals. So top 4, and one of the most talked about decks from the event, is this Quad Lapras deck. And there's literally only 4 Lapras. No Oranguru, no Shaman, nothing besides Lapras. As you can see, 11 energy to power up the Laprases. No way to recover energy or Pokemon either. So playing on the edge, in my opinion, right there. And this guy decided to run, I believe it, 18 supporter cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17, 18. Yeah, 18 supporter cards. Now, decks are normally running 9. This guy decided to double up on that count. Now, they're not all draw cards, of course, but, and there's some very peculiar choices here, but if the format, as I mentioned from the previous deck, we see the 3 Lysander and 3 Verse Seeker. So if the format is shifting to an item lock centered metagame, if you will, having more copies of your supporter cards or having a wider variety of supporter cards makes sense, simply because those cards you do get to play under item lock, whereas items you obviously don't get to do that. But if you're under item lock and you need your support and you want to use the effect of a supporter and you have more copies of said supporters, then you won't suffer that much under item lock. And if there's any deck that has the space to run as many as many supporters, it's definitely a deck that only runs 4 Pokemon. So yeah, Lapras GX, it's a pretty good attacker. The grass weakness on paper is horrible because of the CGI being so big, but I believe I read that Carl Peters, who's the guy who made this deck, or who used the deck, I don't know if he made it, played against 3 of them in the Swiss rounds and he beat them all. So that seems pretty impressive, and even though you do have that grass typing, it's not exactly easy to like get at the CGI attacking right away. And Ice Beam GX actually guarantees you get a KO on a Decidueye, and he's also running a healthy amount of energy removal, with the hammers, with a high hammer count of 6, and 2 Team Flare Grunt along with Team Skull Grunt. So all of that energy denial, because the CGI decks run very few energy, can actually help you in the matchup. So it's not exactly like you just outright win because of weakness. Other interesting supporters here are the 2 Judge, and I believe he said the logic behind those is, since you only have 4 Lapras GX as your Pokemon, you're always mulliganing a lot. So you want Judge to limit your opponent's possibilities after you mulligan so much. I guess N should accomplish that the same way, but he preferred to run the Judge, and also because you do have Collect from Lapras. The first few turns you usually spend them using Collect, so in a sense you get to punish your opponent more through the Judge, and you get to recover off of the Judge easier thanks to the Collect attack. He also runs the 1 Olympia and 1 Pokemon Center Lady, which when combined with Rough Seas makes a lot of sense and provides a lot of healing right there. He does run 2 Pokemon Ranger, which do eliminate the effect from Blizzard Burn. So just like Volcanion runs the Ranger for that reason, it's also a soft counter to things like Jolt and EX. But Ranger allows you to attack consecutively without getting punished. Then you also have the 2 Kukui, which are pretty great, so that Lapras can actually hit some better numbers, like 180, in order to KO 180 HP EXs. 190 damage with a Fighting Fury Belt and the Kukui doesn't really accomplish too much, as far as I can remember or I can tell. I mean, the only Pokemon I think would get KO'd by that would be opposing Lapras GXs or Sideguard EX. So 190 damage not too relevant, but reaching 180 it seems pretty good. I already talked about the energy denial through Team Skull Grunt and Team Flare Grunt. The 4 Sycamore, of course, you definitely want 4 Sycamore in this kind of deck. And now the item cards. The one thing I would criticize from the list is the 2 Max Elixir. I generally don't understand why you would choose to run only 2. I personally would definitely drop the Team Skull Grunt for a 3rd Max Elixir at the very least, and I'm not entirely sure what, but I would definitely try to find the cut for the 4th Elixir, because otherwise you might end up attacking, or you're pretty much guaranteed to attack until turn 3, which seems a bit slow in this format. I mean, you do have the hammers to slow your opponent down, but if you flip tails in those, I don't know. I would definitely really want to see the 4 elixir count. 3 switch make a lot of sense as well, so you can attack consecutively with Blizzard Burn, and you can prevent your opponent from Lysander's Talling you. I would like a combination of switch and escape rope, but I can see why it's not possible, and switch is preferred. 2 dive ball, which complement the 4 Lapras GX. They essentially, it's as if you were playing 6 Lapras GX, I guess, whenever you see a dive ball, unless you're under item lock. And 3 energy switch allows you to conserve your resources better, and with the high HP coming off of a Fighting Fury Belt and all of the potential healing with Pokemon Center Lady and the Rough Seas, Lapras becomes really difficult to take down if you're not hitting for weakness. So I believe with all of this, rotating Lapras is so crucial that it's another reason why you would want to run for Elixir, but 2 clearly worked for Carl, and this is another deck I will be exploring next week, so you can look forward to seeing the deck in live, performing live. And yeah, so that's the first top 4 deck, or the 3rd deck that we're reviewing. And then finally the other top 4 deck is a standard-ish Mega Mewtwo list, the single Shaman that I've been talking about coming off of the European metagame, but this guy is also running 3 Wobbuffet. Now 3 Wobbuffet makes sense. He's actually not using Garb, which I question a little bit, because I would assume, or in my mind, you want WoFed for two reasons. You want WoFed to allow you to use item cards under item log. I mean, you promote WoFed and then you get to use your item cards, and with those you get to set up a Garbodor so that in the future turns you can attack with Mewtwo and have access to item cards without needing to promote a WoFed. But this guy chose not to run Garbodor at all. He was happy enough with the 4 Floatstone count and the 3 WoFed. And aside from that, he was running the 1-1 Espeon GX tech line, the 3-3 big Mewtwo. He was also running a Hex Maniac along with a WoFed, which seems really nice. But he's also running 4 stadiums, but instead of a 2-2 split, he chose to use 3 Shrine of Memory. So he's really relying on damage change. He really wants to abuse that ability, and with 3 Shrine of Memories it seems really easy to pull off despite the lower basic energy count. He's only using 6 total psychic energy instead of 7, but I guess sacrificing 1 energy is not the end of the world, and the WoFed seems like a really nice addition. I mean, Mewtwo is such a solid attacker that even if they start dealing some little damage through the CDI's ability, it's not the end of the world, as long as you can out damage them greatly through the Mewtwo's. So I can see why Garb might not seem as necessary now. Although I would definitely question the Volcanion matchup for this deck, because without Garbodor, Volcanion could get really tricky. But yeah, those are the top 4 decks coming out of Malmo Regionals. We will be exploring at least 2 of them, and probably the CDI Valplum, although a lot of people are requesting for me to use my list with the Meowth. So I guess a lot of people want to see the Meowth in action, and I'll try to make that happen. And yeah, so it's interesting to see how the decks are now trying to adapt to this new heavy item lock metagame. I don't think there's any argument possible to say that the CDI Valplum, I'm not gonna say it's the best deck in the format, but it's definitely at least in the top 3. You know, it's if you have different tiers of the format, I would say today the top 3 or top 4 decks would be Turbo Darkrai, Mega Mewtwo, the CDI Valplum, and Volcanion. Those, in my opinion, would arguably be the top 4 decks in the metagame. But having said that, it's always expected for us to see the metagame change and counters to pop up in order to counter such like the tier 1 decks, and so we see a shift in the metagame of the top tier decks and things like that. Mega Gardevoir is in a weird spot where it loses really badly to the CDI Valplum. It has a really rough Turbo Darkrai matchup, but then it can deal with Volcanion and it can deal with Mega Mewtwo. Like Mega Mewtwo is pretty much an auto win, so Mega Gardevoir is in that limbo where in the right metagame it can be a really good call, but in the wrong metagame it can be a horrible call. And I feel like Mega Rayquaza could be in that scenario as well. Turbo Darkrai is always a solid choice. Yveltal is also always a solid choice because of their versatility. And yeah, with this I'm going to conclude the video. I hope you guys enjoy this kind of videos. I definitely enjoy making them and analyzing the trends and the metagame shifts and everything. But next week we are back to showcasing the different aspects of the decks. So leave a like on the video if you can, guys. That really helps out the channel. And for those of you that keep asking, if you want to support me through Patreon or through donations, now that this is my full-time job, the link is always in the description down below, and through my Twitch you can reach the donations page, or if you want to sign up for Patreon, that would be really awesome as well. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you on Friday for a brand new entry series into the TCG Pokedex. We are using a Valplum deck to hit for quadruple weakness in the expanded format. And after that, I will see you guys on Monday. Oh, and today I'm streaming at night. No, never mind, I'm not streaming. Because I have an interview. So no, I'm not streaming today, sorry. Probably be streaming tomorrow though. I'll let you guys know on Facebook. Thank you guys, and bye-bye.